Episode 246 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. I'm your host, Champ Ron. Thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate you guys. Shout out to everybody that's on IG Live, everybody that's on Facebook in the Facebook group, the Minding Your Business community, and everybody that's on YouTube and watching wherever you are and listening. Thank you so much for coming back. We're moving right along here at episode 246. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star. Wherever you get your pods. That helps us continue to grow the Mind Your Business community. And of course, you can always catch me at champronbrooks.com. You want to connect directly, text me 312-847-4071. That's 312-847-4071. I like to share information that comes sometimes from guests that we have here on the podcast, discounts and different ideas, webinars, training videos, workshops, things like that. I like to share with you guys. So make sure you text me, and it comes directly to me, no bots and no BS. So, text me 312-847-4071. Woo, you guys are taking it hard if you're up north or in the Midwest today. We're recording this on Friday, February the 5th, and I saw the weather, and I don't miss any of that at all. I'm being here in Tennessee. I actually talked to some bankers up at the Banking Association in Minnesota yesterday, and they were expecting 40 below, which is just insane. It's insane. How do you even go outside and do anything at 40 below? It seems like you just walk outside and cry, and then your tears turn to ice, and everything else turns to ice. And I mean, what do you do? So shout out to you people that are dealing with and enduring that type of weather. And I know someone's going to say, Ron, that's not really that cold. Shut up and relax. I go outside in shorts and flip flops and 40 below. It's no big deal. So I know somebody's going to say that. So, but nonetheless, let's get into it with our guest today. I'm excited to have Ken Auer, our guest today, founder of RoleModel, chief product officer. He's there in the North Carolina market. And we're going to talk a little software development today with his background. As it's always intriguing for me when you catch men and women who are kind of on the cusp and on the forefront of software development, particularly what we see in today's generation of software. And even with what we're doing today with podcasting, we were talking about this, that, it wasn't long ago where this would have been unheard of to be able to do that. I mean, we were still kind of whining and griping about long distance calls back in some of these times. And now, look how much software has developed and taken us to. So, Ken, thank you so much, my friend, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the Minding Your Business podcast.
It's a blessing to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive right in, man. Talk about yourself. Obviously before you were getting into software, you had a kind of a journey to where you are today. So, kind of walk and unpack that for us. Kind of what was your walk and how did you get to what you're doing today?
Before I got to software, a long time ago, Ron. But actually, the wild thing is I wanted to be a baseball player. And I found out pretty early in my baseball career that I wasn't a baseball player that was ever going to be getting any attention from anybody in the pros. But I was pretty good at math and started doing some statistics just for fun in baseball, and started playing some what the equivalent of fantasy baseball, I guess, was Stratomatic baseball. And I'd figure out all kinds of ways to draft the best team. And I started slaughtering my opponents, and some of the guys said I should be a statistician or something. So I wrote to the commissioner of baseball, and, that's back when you had to write letters, right? And
right.
Sent it off.
Who knew?
Believe it or not, a few weeks later, I got a letter back.
Wow.
I'm sure it was a form letter, but it was pretty exciting. And, I said, well, what does it take to be a baseball statistician? And somewhere in the letter, actually, I still have it in my closet somewhere, said something about computers.
Wow.
And so I was, my older sister was taking some college classes. Her boyfriend, who became her husband, had taken a computer class and said, yeah, this is the future. So I said, all right, sounds good.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I was programming on a TRS-80 and taking some college classes in computers. And I eventually did write a program to help me draft my Statomatic baseball players, but pretty much that's all I've done related to baseball since then. Just doing a lot more software.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what's funny about that, Ken, is I placed my bet for the Super Bowl just earlier on Draftkings. I might need to before I shout out Draftkings too much, we might need to talk. If you want to advertise here on this podcast, right? But anyway, I placed my bet. So it's interesting, again, I was chuckling to myself as you were kind of explaining, that journey through, baseball and developing stats and things like that till today, where, we do all this stuff through software now. I'm able to get all these statistical data analyses and, insight and all that type of stuff, kind of right to my phone. Right. Yeah, and so to be able to synthesize it and make decisions. And so, that's intriguing. And so when you started RoleModel, okay, and you started kind of mid to late 90s, walk us through that time, because there's some that are listening that may not recall or may not even have been around. Like I shared with you, I was on the younger end of my wall, kind of coming of age during that time, and I can remember utilizing computers and software then. But kind of unpack the climate at that time and what kind of led you to start RoleModel.
Sure. Well, actually, I started my first programming when I was like 1980. So, went through the typical go to college, got my computer science degree, got a job. But I was fortunate enough to be in the business when PCs were just kind of coming out and coming into business. I had a co-op job with IBM, so I learned how to punch cards way back when that's how you programmed, with the little cards, and don't drop them on your way to the lab.
Right.
But got in pretty early. Was very fortunate to be there when the first crazy people were starting to think about what's called object-oriented programming, using a language called Smalltalk, which is really the father of object-oriented programming, GUIs, a lot of stuff. And,
right.
Got into that early on. Ended up, I'd grown up in the Northeast and overshot North Carolina, and ended up in Florida for 3.5 years, thawed out there.
Yeah.
And I was looking to be somewhere between Florida and New Jersey, where my family was. So had an opportunity to come up here to North Carolina to be part of a very small consulting firm that used Smalltalk. And little did I know, I was probably one of the foremost Smalltalk experts in the world, with a couple of years experience when I started that.
Yeah.
And just kind of took off. I was doing consulting, helping other people build software with this technology. And after about 9 years, they were having me travel a lot more than I wanted to. So I said, look, I'm in the middle of Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. There's got to be businesses here that'll pay me. So I started my own business in 97.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, it was really kind of the dawning of the internet.
Right. It was.
And as I was starting my business, it was it's like, wow, I can actually do this from home, and I can still be a world-class software developer with clients in, Texas and wherever else, and not have to travel so much. So that was really the thing. I had small kids at the time, and just didn't want to be on the road as much. So that's what started it, and got it right when the internet was starting. And had, obviously, at that point in time, a lot of years of experience. But I was the typical technician wanting to be an entrepreneur, not realizing that people weren't just going to throw their money at me because I was smart.
Right.
And had to start learning a few other things. So learning how to actually operate a business, and marketing and sales, and all those kind of things that I don't know how many people have read the EMyth Revisited. I just listened to it recently. I was just cracking up listening to descriptions of me when I was young and not knowing what I was doing.
Well, and see, that's a tremendous story, because Ken, you had a skill set in one area, but what you learned is that in operating a business, right, you have to have these myriad of skill sets, and often that may not be in you, right? So you had to build out your team in order to really build that business and be successful. So, talk about that piece of it, of how you two things. One, how do you recognize, to build the talent in your team kind of around you, as the founder of the company, to make sure that you were addressing areas that maybe you didn't quite have as high a skill set in, and then maximizing the areas that you did have even more of a passion and skill set. And then how you recognize so early in the internet pathway that the network capacity of the internet would allow for things like that, for us to get to the point, kind of to where we are today, where, it allows for so much remote connectivity, and job functions can be, serviced adequately, by utilizing the internet. It seems like you caught on to that very early. I remember for me, now again, I'm speaking from more of a kid perspective, but
Sure.
The internet for me was, I'd go to NBA.com or something like that, some of those early websites, and you just kind of surfed and got information, not very granular at all. Just just basically you could go on there and just see information without having to watch a show or order a magazine or go to the library. Right. But for you to see it so early on, so kind of talk about, that building the team and, kind of recognizing the power of the internet.
Sure. Well, I did have a minor in management in college, and then having joined a 4-person company when I moved up to North Carolina, it had grown to probably 75 people when I left. It made the Inc. 500 4 years in a row.
Wow.
So I saw some things happen. I saw some things that I liked in the growth. I saw some things I didn't like. I didn't like the fact that at the latter years, a lot of people were being asked to travel so much, and it was messing with their families. So, one of my goals was not only to not mess with my family, but not mess with other people's. And, so I really wanted to grow a business where I felt like this was going to be a healthy culture. So it was really, but it was very insular in that when I first started, I was like, I'm going to find good people, take good care of them, and they'll do great things.
Yeah.
Which they did. But I wasn't very good at finding the customers. In fact, what would happen is I'd find a customer, we do amazing things, but while we're doing that, I wasn't busy finding other customers.
Yeah.
Right. So you had these ups and downs of, oh, we're about out of work here. We got to go find some more.
Right.
And then, of course, 2001, 2002 hit where, although people may not remember it if you weren't a software developer, that's when people stopped spending money on software for a couple of years.
Right.
So I went from a 1-person company to 11-person company to a 1-person company in my first 6 years of business. So after that, learned a bunch of things during those 6 years. But then I always wanted to run a fairly lean company. And when it went back for 1 person, it was very lean again.
Yeah.
And I learned some things that, could be automated. I could farm outsource to people. So when I grew the company back up in the mid 2000s, I learned how to do it very lean.
Yeah.
Take advantage of some things on the internet. And
sure.
But again, I basically fell into the same problem. I still wasn't great at the sales part.
Yeah.
Pretty good at the delivery part. And then when 2007, 2008 hit again, guess what? I went right back down to that 1-person company. And I know you have this legacy living thing that I was trying to say, okay, what is my legacy? I've done this, I failed. It failed at one level. I mean, I still had a company. It just didn't have much business.
Yeah.
Twice. And am I going to do this again, or I go out and get a real job again? Right. And I really just said, okay, let me learn from those years and realize that running lean was good when it was working.
Yeah.
But running lean and not paying attention to some of the marketing and sales and other things that I only did when I had to was something I had to fix. So
sure.
At that point in time was really in 2009 when I said, all right, I'm going to do this one more time.
Right.
And hopefully it's the last time. It's going to leave a legacy and it'll outlive me.
Yeah.
So, we went and started looking for people that could join the team and provide some of the things that I wasn't providing. Things I didn't get up in the morning to do, which was like market and sale.
Yeah.
That took a long time to actually get that right. Quite honestly, I feel like I feel great about our marketing and sales team right now.
Yeah.
They got me on things like podcasts,
Sure. Yeah. It's how we connected. Yeah.
That's how we connected.
Yeah.
And I feel great about that, but it took a long time to get to the right people. Because a lot of times marketing and sales people want to just figure out what's easy to market and sell. No, I don't want you to find what's easy to market and sell. I want you to sell what I'm offering.
Right.
And
Two
to find that
things.
right connection, who people said, yeah, well, let me work with you to figure that out and how to sell it. It took us a while. And of course I learned lots of mistakes. As somebody said, you can tell the pioneers by the arrows in their backs sometimes, and you learn by mistakes, and then you start settling into some things at work. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers your questions, but
no, it does. It does.
Definitely took a long time for me to learn some of those mistakes. And that's to say, when I was listening to EMyth Revisited recently, I was just laughing at myself. Say, man, if I would have had that book 20 years ago, I might have gotten successful a little faster.
Well, but you endured a lot of, the cyclical nature of business, and as the environment became, unstable because you were operating lean, as you mentioned, Ken, that kind of helped you. And then you recognized where, you needed a boost, right? And that sales and marketing piece. And so, building your team up over time, I'm sure it really helped you. Now, you mentioned, when you were talking about, legacy living, which, my first book. And, something interesting that I read about you was you were introduced as the father of software craftsmanship at the Software Craftsmanship North America conference back in 2009. Talk a little bit about that, because when I think you were talking about legacy, that coming in 2009, kind of right in the middle of all the brouhaha that was going on during that time, economic impact, changing of administrations in Washington and that sort of thing. Sure. Talk about that, being the father of software craftsmanship. That certainly speaks to legacy.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I was introduced that way, but I can also understand how somebody might have that impression. I think the one thing that I have done, I've learned from a lot of mistakes, but I do learn from them.
Sure, which is good. Yeah, that's the key.
And but one thing was interesting. I said early on, I got involved in technology that was actually revolutionary. I mean, object-oriented technology, which some people take for granted today or even reject today, is actually kind of funny. Yeah. But it was a huge step forward in bringing in graphical user interfaces, et cetera. I kind of got there when that was just coming out of the labs and into the world.
Yeah.
And at the time I ran into a lot of people who, they gotten their computer science degree, and this is the way we wrote software, and this is the way we always did it. And it was good enough for Abraham Lincoln. It's good enough for me. I was kind of coming in there as fresh blood. And, and I started finding out that some of the people that I worked with didn't have computer science degrees. And they were some of the best developers I worked with. And I just always think, well, what makes a good developer? And, an open mind, some organizational skills. But one of the things that kept on coming back was the people that were best would talk about somebody who took them under their wing and showed them how to do it.
Sure.
And I'd had some of those experiences in my life too. So it wasn't just my computer science degree, but the people who came alongside me. And I said, if this mentorship thing is a key ingredient, and I thought about the way I was programming and how little of it I learned in college.
Yeah.
Because it was the way I was. In fact, if you look at computer science programs now, man, they haven't changed much other than that you hand in your assignments over the internet and stuff.
Yeah,
but what's being taught hasn't changed much in 40 years.
Okay.
Realistically. And I look back and think, man, what I was taught didn't really prepare me for what I'm doing now. It really didn't teach me how to build software. It's almost like, to some extent, teaching somebody how to be an architect without ever building a building.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And actually I ended up building my own house years ago, and worked with a lot of great people who knew what they were doing,
Right. Of course.
These guys, it's like, look, and they would tell you, look, yeah, here's what the architect drew, but that ain't going to work right here.
Right.
I've been building buildings for a long time, and that's not going to work here. And, and they had amazing techniques and stuff. And it's like, nothing against an architect, but they're not a builder.
Right.
Right. And
True.
It's kind of the same thing. Nothing against computer scientists, but they're not software developers.
Yeah.
You're building software. You need to learn how to build software. So I actually, when I started my own business, I was trying to be pretty conservative and not, take on any debt.
Yeah.
And in fact, I started the business. I got to back up a little bit. The business I was with, I had 3% of stock ownership. Haven't been the fourth employee there, and some options. And as I was getting ready to leave the company, all of a sudden somebody approached the company about buying it. And so I was like, well, I'll stick around a little longer. My options, for another few months, my options will turn into some extra cash.
Sure.
And I can start my business with some more money, right? And I didn't have any golden handcuffs. So I walked in one day with I talked to my wife about, we're going to do this, whether, this sale happens or not, but the sale's happening. So that's cool. Right.
Right.
Some money. So I walked in with my resignation letter, and they were supposed to close the deal on Saturday and wire, it'd been $300,000, $400,000. I forget the exact figure.
Yeah.
And I walked in with a resignation letter and saw the financial controller and said, so how'd it go this weekend? She said, the deal fell through. I said, you're kidding. She said, I wish I was.
Wow.
So I called up my wife and she said, how'd it go this weekend? I said, the deal fell through. She said, you're kidding. I said, I wish I was.
Wow.
And she said, so what are we going to do? I said, we're going to start our business with a lot less money and a lot more faith. So we did. I handed in my resignation letter and then we started out, and I had a little money in the bank, but not as much as I thought I was going to start with.
Yeah. So what was what was your wife's response? And then how was she, or what role did she play in supporting, that effort? Because obviously that's a shock, right? The deal falls through. You're expecting, kind of, one thing, you're getting something different. So now, like you say, it challenges that, that faith that you have in your effort and your abilities and that sort of thing, the relationships that you had built. So, how was, her engagement or support, helpful for you as you went down that journey?
Well, first of all, I almost left the company a year earlier.
Okay.
So we'd already talked about the possibility. So we were kind of prepared. And at that point in time, the sale wasn't even in the picture.
Gotcha.
But a couple things changed at that point in time. We had another baby that year, our second. And, it was kind of like, well, some things are better at the company. Maybe now's not the time with a new baby coming, blah, blah, blah. Right. So by the time we got to that point, it was all right. The thing we were going to do last year, we're going to do now. So we'd already talked about doing it without the money. So I think it made it a lot easier on her. And I think, thank God that it did, because she's a very conservative lady. Sure. And she keeps me from doing a lot of stupid things. But at that time, she was very supportive, probably slightly more concerned than she would have been if we had more money in the bank.
Sure.
But it was also actually in many ways a real great blessing that, if I had that money in the bank, I might have just eased into the business,
Right.
But it's one time, I got to actually make this work.
Yeah.
We got to eat off of this.
Yeah, you make a tremendous point that I think all of us listening and participating can take away, is that sometimes that maybe not having that quite as big a parachute, right? Or maybe being the plane up a little higher than you normally would like to be. Sometimes that engages you even more, right? And so. Right. Sometimes what you find in yourself within your own character is that you really have it in you, and you can go and maybe that creates a sense of urgency in you that maybe you might not have had if you had a couple extra, maybe commas when you pull the bank statement, right? And so I think, my point in bringing that up is, MYB community, as you listen to Ken explain, that story, something to take away is, sometimes, as you find, the road's not always as cleanly paved as you may like. It may have a little pavement, but it may have a lot of gravel. There may be some trees you got to cut down along the way, potentially. It may not be a raw land like a forest, but you may still have to go through some lions, tigers, and bears, to get there. And so, don't let that be a hindrance. As Ken shared his story, that it really helped engage him even more. And a lot of times you'll find if you go and go ahead and start moving forward, right, in the right direction, you'll find that your character and your tenacity, your focus, take over, and you'll find yourself achieving a success and the goals that was meant for you. So.
Yeah. So, well, this actually may sound like a total rabbit trail, but this ties back into the apprenticeship thing and craftsmanship. So when I was getting ready to leave, and a couple of my friends at the previous company who are also ready to leave that company were saying, "Hey man, take me with you." I was like, "I'd love to." But then when they found out that I was starting a business without any money, they were a little more hesitant. And I also knew how much money they were making, and I also didn't want to pay that much because I didn't have as much business at that point in time.
Right. Exactly. Very true.
I was like, but I also knew I needed help pretty quickly because I was doing all the work, and I was, janitor and bookkeeper and everything else. I quickly hired the bookkeeper.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do that anymore. But I was like, man, I need some other technical help. It's like, well, I can't afford these $100,000 a year guys at this point. And I can probably hire somebody out of college, but they're going to want $50,000 a year, and they don't know nothing yet because they learned the same things I'd learned,
Right.
And I'm going to teach them over. So we'd been. I knew some young people. I said, "Hey, how about I do a little mini intro to programming for you, and see how that works." So I did that one summer. And it just didn't work out real well with those particular guys. They were both straight A students, but had been to traditional school. Where they'd been to classrooms. And I was trying to, like, you got to learn. I'm going to throw you some stuff, but you got to dig in. You got to, learn to learn. And anyway, but at the same time, I just heard about homeschooling. And I met a few homeschoolers, and I said, they seem to be people that are more self-motivated to learn. And I even asked these guys who are 4.0 students who didn't work out that well, do you think the way I approach this would work better with homeschoolers? Oh yeah, the homeschoolers we know would probably eat this up. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to look for a homeschooler. And I really wanted an apprentice. I didn't want to have a class. I wanted an apprentice who was eager to learn. But I didn't know where to find them. So I sent out an email to a homeschool email loop, which happened, they used to have them back then, right?
Right.
It was the internet, right?
Right.
So the internet, and as I pushed the button, I was about to push the send to the group. I told my wife, said, "Honey, I don't really want to do a class. What I really want to do is find somebody who already has the basics of programming and realizes they need a mentor. But I don't know where else to find them, so I'm going to push the button."
Right.
I pushed the button, and I said, I'm probably gonna get like 20, 30 people saying they want me to teach their kids. And but I'll do the class, and hopefully somebody will shine from that class, right?
Right.
Well, I got no response.
Whoa, zero.
I was like, what? They don't realize this is like God's gift to programming, and nobody's signing up,
Right.
And I just had nobody sign. And a lot of it was the timing, I think. But then I got this one email from this guy, and says, "Hey, I know this is too much to ask. I know you're going to offer this class in December, but I'm kind of tied up. And if you could just postpone it to January, that would be great. You'll find that I've already learned the basics of programming, and what I'm really looking for is an apprenticeship." I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me."
Wow.
I said, "Carol, come here. I got an 18-year-old homeschooler with a resume."
Right.
So, which is exactly what I was looking for. And we talked, and next thing you know, he came on board, and both were invested in making it work. He was thinking he'd rather skip college. And I was thinking, I don't really care whether you have college. And I was like, man, I just hope I don't screw this kid up. If he ends up in a better spot in 4 years than he would have been if he went through college, I succeeded.
Yeah.
Well, sure enough, in a year and a half, he was exceeding some other folks who I was working with in my clients that had a 4-year degree and a couple years of experience. And I was like, this works. And, he was an exceptional young man too. In fact, he since then has started his own business, and he's made more money than I have. So,
wow.
But
that's good. That's part of, your aim at that point.
After I did that, I just started saying this is working. And I just started going after that apprentice. And I did eventually hire some more experienced developers as we had some more success. But I always said, man, this is something that older men should be teaching younger men. And this was just something I really believed in, and I saw it work, So we just started doing that. And then after doing that for a number of people, I started what's called the Craftsmanship Academy. We still do it. It's how we bring in new people every year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, the first phase of it is kind of a classroom, but it's again, kind of that I'm going to point you in direction. You got to figure it out.
Right.
And then we slowly bring them into our projects, and we teach them how to build software. And some of those guys are now some of my best craftsmen here. So that's what we've done. So when I was introduced as the father of software craftsmanship, it was because I was the first crazy person to think that that could actually be done.
Right. And so Ken, talk about the companies that you work with. You've worked with, hundreds of clients. But yeah, what type of companies, what do they come to you looking for, and what do you end up doing for them as it relates to that software development? Are you developing kind of like core systems for them to operate with, or are you adding on maybe, ancillary, software to existing structures, or, kind of unpack that a little bit for us too?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we craft custom software tailored to people's business by collaborating with them.
Yeah.
The ideal customer for us is somebody who has an expertise in their particular domain.
Sure.
But don't know how to build software, but
Yeah.
recognize that, boy, if I had the right software that could take my expertise and put it into something that I can leverage to share with others, whether it's my own team or whether it's my customers, then our job is to extract that expertise, put it into software in a way that does exactly that. So that's the gist of what we do. We've done it for small mom and pop startups. We've done it for Fortune 5 companies.
Yeah.
Our sweet spot would really be small to medium business that, they've established themselves as experts in their particular industry.
Sure.
They're trying to take it to the next level. The things that they've learned through the school of hard knocks or whatever,
right,
has just been, okay, now I really know, now that I know what I'm doing, how do I scale?
Right.
How do I take it to the next level?
Do you develop custom software? So like, I'm thinking of like a sales organization, right? An insurance company or some kind of sales organization that may be using a software like a Salesforce.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, we would write something that would integrate with Salesforce.
Yeah.
So what we don't do is the massive, hey, every company needs something like this. we more of the, hey,
Right.
our unique company needs something I can't just get off the shelf. In fact, we've had people who called us saying, hey, I want some software that does this or that. And we end up doing a Google search and finding the software they need for them and say, why didn't you find this? Have you tried this? No, I haven't tried that. Thank you. All right.
Right.
Well, I don't want to build you software that you can get that somebody already built.
Right.
What I want to do is build software that doesn't exist somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And because it's an investment. I mean, most of our customers, it's our sweet spot somewhere between $100,000 and $500,000 worth of software.
Yeah.
That's an investment. But just like, if you're in a lot of fields, you take a capital investment, right?
Right.
You can't just snap your fingers and, have a building, right?
Right.
You got to have a building. You got to have, some equipment, whatever it's going to be. So it's a capital investment. So, really our folks are the people who say, look, I'm going to make this capital investment that I'm going to get a return on.
Right.
And sometimes it's a startup who they've got some money, they got some funding, and they're ready to, start up a new company. Other times it's that business who's been around for a while, but we need to take it to the next level. Every once in a while, we'll get a big company who realizes, the people we have here don't know how to build with this, or I can't get the right people.
Yeah.
I know they'll find out about us, and we'll be brought in there.
Sure.
But that's not really our target. Again, our target is more like the privately held small to medium business, $5 million to $500 million.
Yeah.
That are ready to take it to the next level.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. How can people get in touch with you? So someone that's listening to this, that's operating a business that's in kind of that swim lane, so to speak, that you described, Ken, what's the best way for them to connect, with you in the organization if they've got, say additional questions, or maybe they're interested in hiring and bringing you on to help them, particularly in light, and I want to get, to this in just a second in terms of the pandemic, but, in light of kind of this current environment, the impact that software can make, and kind of differentiating your company and having something a little more proprietary, right, than say like a white label or something like that. How can they connect with you that way?
Yeah. Well, RoleModelSoftware.com.
Yeah.
Will pretty much give you the overview and give you contact information. the other thing we specialize in is we have another website is lightningcad.com, which is basically a framework we built for engineer to order businesses. Everything from people who build decks to people who build docks, people who build compressed air systems, anything that every order is custom in some way.
Okay.
So you mentioned about Salesforce, for example. Salesforce gives you a way to track your customers, but it doesn't give you a way to give your customer a particular service.
Right.
So like Rapid Air has compressed air systems. We built a designer for them so that you can kind of sketch out, here's what I want, and it'll give you an immediate quote, tell you all the parts you need, and put it into your shopping cart.
Sure.
And it hooks up with their CRM directly, so they now have contact with you, et cetera. So we're the guys who would hook into your back end, your CRMs, your e-commerce systems, your ERPs. We're providing the things that those things don't provide.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's tremendous. Thank you for sharing that. And that information's in the show notes, everyone. So you can go there and go right to the website and connect with Ken and his team. And if you do so, let them know that you heard Ken right here on the Minding Your Business podcast here on episode 246. And so, Ken, as we kind of wrap up, I'd love to hear a little bit of your take on this current pandemic, right? And kind of how you're working with companies today. What are you, what kind of requests maybe that are different in comparison and contrast to pre-pandemic, and that sort of thing. So kind of unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, it's actually been interesting when it all hit back in March. We had a couple people we were talking to, and all of a sudden they just put on the halts.
Yeah.
Right. But actually kind of turned around oppositely. People who were in a solid enough business who said, okay, things are different for us. What should we do? It kind of made them slow down a little bit to think about what they could be doing differently. So it's really helped us,
right,
in that way. But what's interesting is, we went from when I started my business, I said I wanted to be local and not mess up the people's families. We were all pretty local for a long time, but as the internet has gotten to the point where we can do these kind of calls and Zoom calls and all the other stuff, we started becoming a distributed team. So I've got folks in Wisconsin and Rochester, New York, and not just cold places. We got some places in warm places too. Tennessee, where you are, not exactly where you are, Knoxville.
I'm actually here in Memphis. Yeah.
But, we've got some remote folks, and we just have the tools. We've been collaborating like this for years.
Yeah.
So, most of our customers aren't actually local anymore. We do have a couple local customers, but we have customers in Australia and all over America right now. So we can work with you remotely. We're very used to it. We're always happy to have a face-to-face meeting if that's possible.
Sure.
But, we do a lot of that over Zoom. Like I said, we've got one of our favorite customers is out of Australia, and we met their president one time as he was on his way to the UK. But everybody else has always been remote, and we've been able to deliver some game-changing software for them. So so the internet now enables you not only to us to work with people in a collaborative way, but connect them. I mentioned the dock designer that we're doing for a company called Kona Docks in Florida. They do these floating docks, and you can any day now they're using it with their sales team, but they're about to put it on their public website that you can design your own dock, and they can have all these conversations with you. We're even actually using about to release an augmented reality feature so that you can design your dock and go out to your backyard or wherever your closest pond is you want to put your dock and see it there.
Yeah.
And the technology is enabling you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do before with that kind of thing for replace your salespeople, not even replace them, but augment them, right? Where they don't have to be at a place, which it's becoming harder to travel, et cetera.
Sure.
Put the technology closer to your clients that enables them to collaborate with you well.
Yeah.
Make a big difference. So we're definitely seeing a surge in that. And I think it'll continue as you're seeing a lot of companies who they used to have offices and now they're starting to work remote. They're realizing, boy, we can actually do it this way.
Right.
And
Exactly.
Again, I love personal face-to-face things.
Sure.
And again, that's why one of the reasons I started the business was so I didn't have to travel so much, but I always still
Yeah.
wasn't because I didn't like people.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, you can do things that you may not think you can do. And as you start thinking about with this pandemic, even when the pandemic's over, and hopefully that's real soon,
Sure.
there's some ways you can leverage technology that can make it be game changers for your business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a tremendous point that even as we, whatever, we get to a point where the pandemic starts to subside, right? And, things are able to kind of free flow in a little bit more smoother fashion, right, than they do today. I think that's a big lesson that people have learned at all levels of business, right? Is that you can integrate, and I've always had this philosophy, Ken, on technology. And I had this when I led teams, in banking, was technology should be used to handle some of the mundane transactional, type tasks, so that the human being can do what it does best, which is interact and build relationships, right? And so versus using technology as solely a replacement, kind of like like you're mentioning, to more of your point, which is, how do you leverage technology as a resource, right? Like any other resource that you have, to get down to, what's the core essence of what you do, right? Which is the people business, right? It's the human to human contact of, how do you solve problems for other people? And the bigger those problems are that you're solving, the better it's going to be for the success of the business and everybody that's a part of it. And so I think, people learning that and getting comfortable with, like you mentioned, Zoom and virtual nature of being able to do business and having teams operate virtual, which I think many companies only thought that was only for these, for tech companies and, people coming out of Silicon Valley, and everybody else needed to be crammed in offices. And now, going into a year into the pandemic, almost, now people are understanding, right? Leaders are understanding. And of course, some of that, they see the bottom line. It's like, whoa, I don't all these cubicles and all that office space, it was a nice line item on the financials. But I think people, again, people get comfortable, right? They get an understanding and they see it work, right? And they see it work for others.
Absolutely. And you got to, the flip side of it, you've got to make sure there's people you can trust, because this technology allows a lot of scams too. So
that's for autonomy.
Check their track records if you're working with somebody remotely. We've been in business for a long time, and even though we went down to one person, we've been doing a lot of good work. It's been a long time since I've been a one person company now, but check people's portfolios, right?
Right. Exactly.
They've done, talk to their references. Don't just say, oh, well, we can work anywhere. It's like, yeah, we can work work with people who aren't working.
Right. Right. My friend, it's about receipts and it's about resumes. Right. And so you got to check resumes, not just on people coming to work for you, but you check company resumes and people you're looking to do business with. And then also you got to look at receipts, right? And so those things are always good to mention. That's a good note to share here with the entire audience. So Ken Auer is our guest today. He's the founder of RoleModel. Ken, this has been tremendous. I've learned a ton. I loved your kind of taking us a little bit down memory lane a little bit with software, and just what you're doing today to help kind of small to medium businesses be just a little bit better, right? In the way that they can do business and a little more efficient. I think is tremendous. So thanks and shout out to you and your team. Shout out to you for enduring those years, right? Through the lean years and some of the cyclical, again, nature of things to be right here and still standing and still going strong, man. So definitely appreciate that, Ken. That's an inspiration. And man, thank you for joining here on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll have to do this again as things kind of develop, and maybe we get kind of through the pandemic a little bit, at least kind of the eye of the storm, and maybe we have a few laughs and we can talk about what businesses are using software now at that time. So that'll be tremendous. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. God bless you, Ron.
All right. Hey, Ken, thank you so much, my friend. Take care, man. Be great. All right, excellent. That was Ken Auer, founder of RoleModel, that joined us today on episode 246. Man, just tremendous. And make sure you connect, with his team. And if you could do that, go to RoleModelSoftware.com. That's where I want you to go. So when you get done with the listening to this episode, go to RoleModelSoftware.com and connect with Ken and his team. Okay. Listen, I'm going to get out of here. I want you guys to go be great. But before you do that, remember, there's 3 things that unite us. No matter where you're from, no matter what side of the tracks, what side of the water you come from. We all want to be a little bit better for ourselves, a little bit better for our families, and a little bit better for our communities. And if you keep that in mind with everybody that you come across, right? It doesn't matter what side of the aisle, blue or red or black and white, all that, that gets used to divide us, right? At the end of the day, those 3 things come into play with everybody that you come across. Better for themselves, better for their family, better for their community. Keep that in mind, and then collectively we can all make this place just a little bit better. Champion on the Mind Your Business podcast.